The UGS Mule Kick wasn't supposed to land on Virex 9. It wasn't even supposed to pass near it. But space, despite the charts and simulations, had its own opinions. A gravimetric storm, not forecasted, not even theoretically possible, ripped through the fabric of their hyperspace corridor like claws through foil. The Mule Kick, a durable but aging multipurpose exploration vessel, was dragged screaming from FTL and hurled into the orbit of a dying red star and its one, very unpleasant child, Virex 9. Every species on board had heard the name. It echoed in pilot briefings, in tavern ghost stories, in ancient star chants passed down in alien songlines. Virex 9 was on no one's list of destinations. In fact, most NAV computers were programmed to avoid calculating paths through its sector. It was officially classified by the Galactic Cartography Guild as Xeno-Anomalous Class Omega, the most dangerous, least understood rating in the system, not because it was actively hostile like a war zone, but because it was wrong. The kind of wrong that made sentient AIs self-delete after one orbital scan. And now, the Mule Kick was crash landing. The ship buckled as it punched through the atmosphere, its shielding barely holding, warning klaxons shrieking across all decks. The clouds outside were a bruised purple, swirling like oil and smoke. Occasionally, they twisted into brief, unsettling shapes, humanoid forms or something close, before collapsing into mist. "Stabilize trajectory," barked Captain Rift, his voice a metallic rasp through his rebreather. His 4 arms moved with practiced precision over the controls, but the console seemed to resist him, buttons pulsing like veins, lights blinking in erratic, almost intentional patterns. "No response from secondary thrusters," shouted Tren, the pilot, his gelatinous body vibrating in distress. "Main engines offline. We're going down. Crash." The Mule Kick slammed into the planet's surface with a bone-jarring jolt that echoed through every bolt and bulkhead. Metal shrieked. Something outside screamed back. Then silence. Dust, if that's what it was, swirled around the viewports. The landscape was desolate and alien. Jagged black rock jutted from the ground like fossilized ribs. The soil shimmered with strange, iridescent motes. Gravity felt inconsistent. The crew could feel it pressing harder on the left side of their bodies, as if the planet couldn't quite decide how physics worked. Everyone sat in the darkened cockpit, stunned, breathing, processing. Then the human spoke. "So," said Lieutenant Monroe, stretching like he'd just gotten out of a nap, "where we set up camp?" Silence, for heads turned toward him in unison. Captain DeRib's mandibles opened and closed slowly, a gesture of disbelief and horror. Tren's gelatinous form went slightly translucent in shock. "Human," the captain hissed, "this world is cursed. It consumes minds. It is not terrain. It is not weather. It is a predator." Monroe blinked, then smiled. "Well, maybe it's just misunderstood." He stood, brushing space dust off his jacket, and made his way to the back of the cockpit. Behind him, the crew murmured in confusion. "Where is he going?" whispered Urok, the ship's tech specialist, his reptilian pupils narrowed into slits. The captain just stared. A moment later, Monroe returned with collapsible tent, a pack of rations, and a small folding chair. "I'm thinking we start on high ground," he said, nodding toward a ridge just visible through the swirling haze. "Gives us a good vantage point. Plus, it looks like there's some kind of mineral deposit up there, maybe geothermal." "You're talking about camping," said Tren, incredulous. "Camping on a planet that eats time." Monroe popped open a ration bar and took a bite. It crackled. "You say that like you've camped in the Rockies during moose mating season." Zadrib slammed one clawed hand on the console. "This is not your Terran wilderness. This place, this abomination, is ancient. It doesn't just kill you. It erodes you. 1,000 ships have disappeared in orbit. Their shadows still whisper in low-band radio. The Guild forbade landing for a reason." Monroe pulled on a thermal jacket and flicked on his portable scanner. "Guild say a lot of things," he said with a grin. "They said we'd never make it past the Orc cloud without our brains boiling. We did. Said humans would never survive cryo longer than a decade. I did 16 years, no brain soup." He opened the hatch. Outside, The wind howled, a sound too articulate to be natural. Something moved in the sky, just beneath the cloud layer. Not flying, more like swimming. Anyway, he called back, if anyone needs me, I'll be scouting a spot for latrines. Be careful out here. It looks like the rocks have teeth. The hatch slammed shut behind him. Inside the ship, no one moved. Tren gurgled nervously. He's insane. Rivk stared through the viewport, watching the human make his way across the nightmarescape with easy strides. No, he murmured. He's Terran, which is worse. The human was whistling. Lieutenant Monroe ambled along the jagged ridge overlooking the valley below, crunching over shards of glassy mineral that shimmered like frozen oil slicks. He was in good spirits, all things considered. Sure, they crash-landed on a quarantined death planet that had erased more ships than a black hole with a grudge, but hey, at least it wasn't humid. He unwrapped another ration bar and bit off a chunk as he studied the terrain. Not bad, he muttered through a mouthful of nutrient paste. Stable footing. Winds coming from the southeast. Decent visibility. We could set up tents between those basalt formations. Natural cover. Behind him, the air shimmered. He paused, turned. Nothing there. Just heat distortion, maybe, or atmosphere distortion, or reality distortion. The jury was still out. Back on the mule kick, Captain Rivk stared at the holoscreen. It flickered and warped, signals refusing to stay still. Radar returned only nonsense. Contradictory terrain readings, moving landmarks, and occasionally what looked like entire star systems compressed into 5-second pulses. He cycled the system. Then again, still nothing he trusted. I want all internal sensors rerouted through analog backups, he growled. But, Captain, we haven't used those in... Then start remembering how. Urok, the ship's tech specialist, reluctantly slithered into crawl space, his forked tongue muttering curses in his native dialect. He didn't say it aloud, but the truth was becoming obvious. The ship's systems weren't malfunctioning. They were being overwritten. An hour later, the crew received their first real warning. Pilot Tren had taken a recon drone outside to attempt a basic aerial scan. The drone rose no more than 30 meters before it froze midair. Then it rotated slowly twice, and collapsed inward like a crushed can. No sound, no warning. Then Tren turned his eyes skyward. Wait, what is that? The others followed his gaze. The sky above Virex. 9 wasn't wrong exactly. It was just off, like a painting someone kept repainting. Never satisfied with the original. The clouds didn't move, they twitched. Shapes formed in them. Shapes that didn't belong in clouds. Once, for half a second, a perfect replica of the mule kick appeared in the sky, upside down, as if the planet was remembering it. Then it vanished. Tren began to breathe faster. I think something's up there, he whispered. It's watching. Don't look at the sky, Rivk ordered flatly. That's the second rule on anomalous class worlds. Don't look at the sky too long. What's the first rule? Tren asked, his voice thin. The captain turned toward the viewport. Don't land. Monroe, meanwhile, had set up his camp. A modest site, complete with thermal tent, a geosensor spike, and a small campfire built with plasma igniters and native stone. The fire shouldn't have burned. The rocks were too wet, too dense, too alive, but it did anyway, with green flame and no heat. He leaned back in his chair and looked up, squinting through his visor. You know, I can see why the others are spooked, he said to no one. Sky is doing that eldritch light thing again. Above him, something unfurled behind the clouds. It didn't emerge. It simply became visible. Tentacles? Limbs? Cosmic smoke trails? It stretched across half the atmosphere. Too big to be real, too detailed to be a hallucination. It pulsed once, a faint hum vibrating deep in Monroe's ribcage. Then it was gone. Monroe blinked. Well, that's new. Inside the mule kick, the crew was deteriorating. Urok had stopped responding to comms. They found him curled in the circuitry bay, drawing fractal diagrams in a pool of leaking coolant. The symbols made no sense. Then again, they made too much sense. His brain's been hijacked. Tren whispered. He's thinking in patterns that don't belong to our species. Not his brain, the captain said. His perception. The planet is redefining what he considers real. Then came the voices. They started over the ship's radio. At first, just static. Then whispers. Then the crew's own voices repeating things they hadn't said. Or hadn't said yet. I want to go outside, Tren said one morning. No, you don't. Zadruk said immediately. I think I do. Something's out there. Something I need to see. Tren, do you remember your training? You're being manipulated. The planet. I'm not afraid anymore. That's not courage. That's infection. Tren reached for the airlock controls. That's when Monroe's voice cut through the channel. Hey, guys, he said cheerfully. Anyone know if these rocks are edible? The ones that blink. Silence. They blink. Tren asked. Oh, yeah, like little eyes. Cute, really. I named one Terry. The captain's mandibles clicked. Human. Return to the ship immediately. Nah, I'm good. Just had breakfast. Got my headlamp. I think Terry likes me. Lieutenant Monroe, Zadruk said in a low, dangerous tone, this planet is distorting the fundamentals of consciousness. You are in danger. We are in danger. Every second you remain outside increases the chance that... Hang on, Monroe interrupted. Someone's here. Static. A pause. Correction. Something's here. Bipedal. Tall. Not human. Doesn't seem hostile, though. Just curious. ZH froze. Describe it. I'd say it looks like a deer. Made of wires. No face. Antlers made of frozen lightning. It's sniffing my pack. Get away from it. Monroe chuckled. Nah, I think it likes me. Gave it a granola bar. You're feeding the wildlife? It was polite. Another pause. Oh, it left. That's rude. That night, as the wind howled and the sky folded in on itself again, the crew gathered in silence. The ship was dying. Systems were failing. The planet wasn't attacking them with claws or storms. It was rewriting the rules. Memory, time, biology, causality. It all bent under Virex 9's impossible pressure. And Monroe, he was adapting. The sensors showed something impossible. Monroe's brainwaves were syncing with the planet's emissions. Not resisting. Not breaking. Matching. The next morning, Tren was missing. A single message remained on the console, written in a language that looked like curling thorns. Roughly translated, it meant, he looked too long. The ground screamed before it opened. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. It screamed, a shrill, layered sound that vibrated through bone and metal alike, as if the planet itself had discovered pain and wanted company. Captain Rivk was thrown from his command cradle as the mule kick lurched violently to port. Alarms erupted across the bridge, overlapping in frantic, nonsensical patterns. Gravity spiked, then vanished, then returned sideways. Structural failure in Cargo Bay 3, shouted a voice, maybe Urox, maybe the ship's own. Hull integrity at. Numbers aren't staying still. Then the floor peeled back. The deck plating warped upward, bending like soft clay before tearing free. Beneath it was not bedrock. It was flesh. A vast, glistening cavity yawned open beneath the ship, lined with rib-like structures that flexed and contracted rhythmically. Heat rolled upward, thick with a coppery stench that made Zeechrik's vision blur. Teeth emerged. Not uniform. Not symmetrical. A chaotic forest of serrated growths, bone crystal, something like chitin, slid into place around the opening. They closed once. Slowly, experimentally, like a jar remembering how to chew. Cargo containers tipped and slid, screaming into the abyss. One of them burst open mid-fall, spilling emergency rations, spare parts, and 2 crew members who hadn't been fast enough. Their screams didn't fade. They echoed, stretched, folded back on themselves. ZH Rivk scrambled for the intercom. All crew, emergency lockdown. Do not approach the ship shuddered again. The mouth bit down. Half the cargo bay vanished. The mule kick was alive with panic now, hissing, clicking, chittering, sobbing. Species that had survived supernovas, void plagues, and living wars were reduced to instincts. Run, hide, pray. Captain, whispered Sensor Techurok over a private channel, his voice trembling. It's not a collapse. It's feeding. ZH-Riv already knew. Outside, Monroe was making esmores. Well, synthetic marshmallow analogs, technically, roasted over his green flame campfire using a bent antenna rod. He hummed softly, boots propped on a chunk of basalt that pulsed faintly in time with the planet's deeper rhythms. When the scream came, he stopped humming. Huh, he said, squinting toward the ship. That's new. The ground beneath him rippled like disturbed water, then settled. He tapped his comm. Captain? You guys okay over there? I think the planet just ate part of the ship. Static. Then ZH-Riv's voice, strained and ragged. Human, return immediately. The surface is unstable. The planet is attacking us. Monroe frowned. Attacking feels like the wrong word. A shadow fell across the camp. He looked up. Something was emerging from the forest beyond the ridge. If the writhing spires of jointed bark-like material could be called a forest. The thing was tall. Too tall. Its body was a cascade of finger-like appendages, each ending in smaller fingers, which ended in still smaller ones, all twitching independently. No face, no eyes, but it was looking at him. Monroe slowly set the marshmallow down. Well, he said calmly, you're not subtle. The thing advanced, every step accompanied by a wet, sucking sound as the ground reshaped itself to cradle its limbs. The air grew heavy. Gravity thickened, pressing Monroe's boots deeper into the soil. ZH-Riv's voice crackled back to the calm Monroe. Run. That is a subsurface manifestation. It's a predator construct. Monroe considered that. Then he grabbed another marshmallow. Hey, he said aloud, tossing it gently toward the creature. Food. The marshmallow bounced once, then stopped midair. The thing tilted. Its countless fingers curled inward, drawing the treat closer. It examined it, not visually, but by touch, by pressure, by probability. Then one appendage delicately absorbed the marshmallow into itself. The creature froze. The ground stilled. Something like surprise rippled through the planet. Inside the mule kick, chaos escalated. Time began slipping. Crew members reported seeing events before they happened. Then after, then during their memory of them. One engineer aged 50 years and 30 seconds, then snapped back to her original form, screaming as both timelines tried to coexist. Another crew member walked calmly into a wall that hadn't existed a moment earlier and vanished like a dropped thought. ZH-Riv dragged himself to the viewport. Outside, he saw the impossible. The human stood inches from the towering horror, and he was talking to it. No sudden moves, Monroe said conversationally. I don't know what your deal is, but eating the ship? That's rude. Those guys are stressed enough. The thing leaned closer. The air vibrated. A pressure, not sound, not language, pressed into Monroe's skull. A question, vast and hungry. Why? You do not break. Monroe winced, rubbed his temple. Oof. Okay. Inside voice, please. The pressure lessened. I dunno, he continued. Guess I've had a lot of practice. Earth's kind of like this, you know? Less tentacles. More paperwork. The thing recoiled slightly. The planet shifted. Deep beneath the crust, something massive adjusted its attention. ZH-Riv felt it. Every surviving crew member did. The sensation of being noticed, not individually, but as components. Except Monroe. He felt recognition. The ground mouth beneath the ship loosened its grip, slowly, reluctantly, like a jaw deciding not to finish the bite. ZH-Riv collapsed against the console, gasping. What did you do? Monroe watched the creature retreat into the forest, its movements slower now. Thoughtful. I didn't fight it, he said. Didn't try to dominate it. Just acknowledged it. ZH-Riv stared at him through the viewport. You treated it like an animal. Monroe shrugged. More like a neighbor with boundary issues. Silence fell. The alarms quieted. The planet breathed. And somewhere deep below, something ancient and vast adjusted its understanding of what a human was. That night, the crew gathered what supplies they could salvage. They whispered. They watched the ground. They did not sleep. Monroe sat by his fire, staring into the shifting horizon. The planet whispered again, not hunger this time, curiosity. And for the first time since they had landed, Zagreb felt true fear, not of the nightmare world, but of the human it was beginning to accept. The planet stopped pretending. There were no more sudden screams in the ground, no teeth snapping shut beneath careless feet. The sky still twisted, still rearranged itself into shapes no mind should hold for long, but now it did so lazily, like a creature stretching after a long sleep. Virex 9 had made a decision. The survivors of the mule kick felt it before they understood it. The pressure that had crushed their thoughts eased. Hallucinations softened into echoes. The whispers didn't stop, but they learned restraint, like a voice realizing it didn't need a shout to be heard. All except Monroe. For him, the planet grew clearer. Captain Rift no longer trusted his own senses. He moved through the ruined corridors of the ship like an old thing, one claw dragging, mandibles twitching at sounds no one else acknowledged. Time had left scars on him, some visible, some not. His reflection in a cracked display panel looked unfinished, as though parts of him had been edited out and poorly replaced. He found Monroe outside again. Of course he did. The human had expanded his camp. Not randomly, never randomly. Tents were aligned with strange stone spires that hummed softly at night. Tools rested where the ground hardened to support them. The fire burned steady now, its flame a calm blue-green, instead of flickering warning. The planet had adjusted. Zagreb watched as Monroe hammered a support beam into the soil. The ground parted politely, then sealed around it, gripping like a living brace. "You should not be alive," Zagreb grasped. Monroe glanced over his shoulder. "Morning to you too, Captain. This world unravels minds. It corrodes identity. It erases civilizations. Yet you walk it like a park." Monroe wiped sweat from his brow. "You ever hear the phrase toxic work environment?" Zagreb didn't laugh. "I feel it," the captain continued. "In my thoughts, in my bones. The planet is thinking around us. And around you it thinks with you." Monroe paused. That was new. He set the hammer down slowly. "Okay, yeah, I was hoping I was imagining that part." The offer came at dusk. The sun, or whatever passed for it, hung too close to the horizon, swollen and distorted, casting shadows that didn't belong to their owners. The air thickened, not with menace, but anticipation. The ground beneath Monroe's campfire warmed. Not heat, attention. Monroe sat cross-legged, hands on his knees, as if waiting for a conversation he'd scheduled himself. When the pressure arrived, it didn't crash into him like before. It knocked. "You, stay." The meaning formed directly behind his eyes. Not words, concepts, intention shaped into thought. Monroe exhaled slowly. "That's flattering, but you kinda ate half our ship." A pause. The ground shifted, almost sheepishly. "Necessary. Error." Monroe snorted. "Buddy, you can't just say error after eating people." The air trembled. Not anger. Confusion. Then something deeper surfaced. Images, impressions, experiences layered over one another. Worlds landing. Minds arriving, breaking, dissolving, feeding the vast intelligence that was Virex 9. Civilizations reduced to nutrients of thought. Curiosity ending in consumption. And then, Monroe, a mind that bent instead of shattered. A consciousness used to chaos, contradiction, hope in hopeless systems. A species that evolved not by harmony, but by surviving environments actively trying to kill it. "You, do, not, fracture." Monroe swallowed. "Yeah, humans are like that. We're bad at quitting. Build. Here." The meaning sharpened. "More. Like you." Zagreb screamed when the ground spoke. Not aloud, inside him. A psychic pressure shoved him to his knees, static flooding his thoughts. He clawed at his head, mandibles clacking in terror. "Monroe!" he shrieked. "It is binding you. Don't listen. This is how it consumes, through purpose." Monroe stood. The pressure lifted from Zichriv instantly. The captain gasped, stunned. Monroe turned back to the horizon. "He's right about one thing," he said carefully. "I can't let you hurt anyone else." The planet paused, waiting. "I'll stay," Monroe continued. "I'll help you build, figure you out. But no more feeding on unwilling minds. No more tearing ships apart just to see what's inside." The silence stretched. Then the ground softened beneath his feet, warm and steady. "Agreed. Terms." Z.H. Rivk's blood ran cold. "You cannot negotiate with a world," he whispered. Monroe smiled sadly. "We negotiate with worse all the time." The evacuation shuttle launched at dawn. What remained of the crew, broken, exhausted, forever changed, boarded in silence. No one tried to stop Monroe as he helped load supplies. No one met his eyes for long. At the top of the ramp, Zivriv paused. "You will die here," the captain said softly, "even if not today." Monroe nodded. "Yeah, probably." Z.H. Rivk hesitated. "Then why stay?" Monroe looked back at the planet, the patient ground, the listening sky. "Because for the first time," he said, "the nightmare ass instead took." The ramp closed. The shuttle lifted. Virex 9 watched it go, then turned its attention inward, toward the small, stubborn mine at its surface. Beneath Monroe's camp, structures began to rise. Not grown, not built, collaborated. The nightmare world prepared for habitation. And somewhere in the dark between stars, long-range sensors would one day detect something impossible. A planet classified as uninhabitable. Pinging back a status update. Colony established. Environment, human compatible.